Finally, we're together. I mean, together, like, it's us. I want you to know how special you are to me. I just feel so alive when I look at you. You know, I see things now that I didn't see before. I have a sense of clarity and purpose. It's like destiny, you know? I feel like I'm the one that's discovered beautiful and perfection. I want to climb to the top of Everest and say, I know what beauty is! I am in love with a Vizio!
Vizio.
So the new Gears maps are way better than the new Halo 2 maps.
I wouldn't know.
Well, I brought my hard drive today.
Stop
I
it.
downloaded and paid for the maps.
Stop it. That's why I have your copy of Gears of War. We gotta keep that laid home, friend.
I'm getting in a rhythm.
And then
I'm
soon
doing
Halo
my-
3 beta
doing
will
my
be out.
Halo.
We'll have that sooner than you know, friend.
I know.
You know what Gears doesn't have? Bubble shield.
You know what Halo doesn't have? Cover, like the most basic thing that anyone would
Yeah,
use
you
in
run
combat.
behind shit.
Whatever.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
jump.
I don't.
Right,
Yep.
because like people in real life on battlefields just jumping all
I would.
around.
They
I
are
would.
when they are a magnificent master chief.
And I jump into a man cannon.
Let's get out of here.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many times did you play Garden last night?
That's all I played last night. I'm trying to master like all the maps.
Oh, have you been sniping through the gas area?
You know, like I can turn off the knobs.
Yeah.
And so I turn them off and then run back and grab the sniper and just try to snipe from that back area.
Have you hearing this? You hearing how awesome it is?
Ignore it. You
You're a fan
guys,
of the
Living in
sniper.
pain right
you
now.
guys and your
'cause I just wanna
macho
play.
gear bullshit.
Jason, you want to start a Gears of War team so that like they can have their little Halo team, but then we'll like have a Gears
Yeah, that
team.
game
you know?
sucks, dude. We should start our own team.
Gears, dude.
This is one of those games that I think people really need to play to appreciate. It's probably not going to play to the masses, but people who are really into just beautiful games, people who are into detailed, involved RPGs, really need to check it out. And I feel like it's one of those games that in 5 years is going to be like through the roof for the second, the aftermarket value.
Yeah, I think this game is like, if you like Streets of Rage, if you're like one of those guys that just likes to beat 'em up, I think like this game, because to me this is like, it's almost like a Final Fight or Streets of Rage with like cutesy role-playing game characters. Because it's like you go around and you just beat up dudes.
It's going to spoil me for every other like 2D platformer ever.
Yeah.
Because now that I've seen what people can do if they really invest the time and expertise and money into making a beautiful 2D game, like just simple 16-bit sprites aren't going to cut it anymore. I mean, yeah, they're nice, but this is nicer. I almost feel like it is to PlayStation 2 what Symphony of the Night was to PlayStation, which is this beautiful, detailed, hand-drawn 2D game that just exceeds what you expect from the system. And on top of that, it seems like it's a simple game, but there's this underlying depth that kind of catches you by surprise. Or maybe a little too much depth. I'm kind of out of my element with it. I noticed the music is by Hitoshi Sakimoto, who did the Vagrant Story soundtrack, and once I made that kind of mental connection, I realized this game really does remind me a bit of Vagrant Story, where you spend a lot of time crafting things, you spend a lot of time worrying about things that aren't really part of the main battle, and that's how you become stronger, by refining and perfecting these things.
And the whole point of this game is to really not think about so much attacking. It's like, it's all about cooking and feeding yourself.
Yeah, you love the cooking too.
I love the cooking because at one point in the game, you actually open up a cafe and a restaurant, and you actually acquire these recipes and you collect certain ingredients, and by combining these ingredients, you can make yourself like spicy chicken, I don't know, maybe some omelet, some egg on toast. And a lot of these things you only eat in the restaurant because all they do is they give you a crapload of experience. We can also get some, like I got this like awesome praline chocolate that I like got to bring out in the battlefield, and it was like super yummy. I was eating that shit. I was like all making myself like, I was like increasing my health and increasing my experience.
You've gotten to the second character, and there's
Yes.
altogether, I think, 5 characters.
Yeah, I'm
that
not
you get
sure.
to play, and the stories kind of
Yeah,
overlap.
Yeah, they kind of
do
intertwine.
Like, a
Like,
Pulp Fiction thing.
for instance, like so when you start with the second character, you're actually beginning the game before the events of the Gwendolyn stage, which is like the first character you play as. And so you actually get to see kind of like what's happening in the world at the same time as Gwendolyn, but like in different points. And so like right now, I think I'm about to the point where Gwendolyn starts in the first game, but I'm still like following the events of the second character. And right now, I mean, the second character plays pretty much the same. I mean, pretty much the same attacks. You know, hold up the Fozon to get. I mean, hold up the sword to get the Fozons. But still, like, it's still fun though, because the whole aspect of making all these foods and like the alchemy and like going to the restaurants, it's very addictive.
Right. It strikes me as being one of those really involved games like Final Fantasy Tactics, where you get like halfway into the first chapter and you realize, man, okay, I finally get this game and everything I've done until now has been completely wrong. So you just kind of want to start over, and then you play it again, and it just all falls together, and it's it just works for you.
I have a report, Your Highness. The Aesir have launched an all-out assault. They are...
The guy who directed this game was actually, he worked on like Street Fighter and Saturday Night Slam Masters, so you can tell that this guy has a love for 2D. And this is one of those games where I'm praying that it sells enough or somehow they can get funding to make a PS3 game where there could be no load times and no slowdown.
Yeah.
Because there's one boss I fought and it was like slow down the entire battle.
It's like you entered the Matrix sometimes when you like hit multiple dudes and it's just like
Yeah, the whole boss battle was like Enter the Matrix times 3. It was terrible.
Yeah, and the load times, I don't know if this will be different, like, because we have like early builds here, but like for the restaurant, like the load times for the restaurant were making me insane.
Yeah, they're really bad.
It's out in like 2 or 3 weeks, so it's probably pretty close to final.
Yeah.
But, you know, little hiccups like that, I guess, are to be expected when a game pushes a system like this. And it's kind of weird because you wouldn't think a 2D game would push the PlayStation 2.
But it's
But
nice
it
to
really
see.
does. There's just so
There's
much on
so
the
much.
screen.
There's so much detail in this game. Like I just said a few things, but the amount of detail in like the backgrounds, like the way the characters move, the way they animate, how big these sprites are. These sprites are massive.
They're huge.
Yeah, the bosses will take up like the entire screen.
Yes.
Like top to bottom.
Yeah.
On a good TV, it looks like a 360 game. It's just,
I
it
think
looks better than anything I've played on Xbox Live Arcade, any of the original games.
I'll go
None
as
of them
far as to say
compare.
that it's one of the best looking games I played on any system now currently. Like I think it looks
really
better
is.
than like most 360 and PS3
Well, it's all
games.
about the art design. It's not
Yeah.
about like
Yeah, but some of-
polygons or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
about how cohesive the design is and how much effort they put into it. How much, just the labor of love.
With the advent of 3D, like everybody kind of said, oh, 2D is last gen, 2D, let's get away from this. I love it when companies decide, no, actually 2D is still this really viable, way to make your game. And
Oh,
if
yeah.
you put that kind of assets and time and effort into 2D, you can get a game like Odin Sphere, and it's
And-
gorgeous.
And I feel like this game wouldn't be as good if it were 3D. Like
There's
even if
no
it were
way.
flat
Yeah.
and had 3D graphics, you still wouldn't get that same the same amazing feeling of control. Like everything is totally spot on. Like the collisions are perfect. You start moving things into 3D and it gets soft and mushy. It reminds me a lot about an anecdote I heard about the movie Pinocchio, about how it was like the last truly great animated film because there were like 11 layers of film that they shot at once, and it was just so expensive they could never do that again. And I get that same kind of feeling from this game. It's just
Yeah.
like this great classic work that I think people will look back on in the future and be like,
Yeah, you know why? The people who developed this game, the last game they made was like 1997,
yeah, it
I
was
think.
Princess Crown, wasn't it?
Yeah, which
And
was
that
like
didn't even come to the U.S.
exactly.
But
and
it was the same kind of game.
It was the same kind of game, but it's the reason why this game is so great is like you said, it's a labor of love. These guys have probably been working on this game for years now, like almost a decade, and so and it shows.
Mark, I hear Final Fantasy music, but kind of flat, kind of off-key,
Just
kind
a
of
little
downsampled, coming from your DS, so I'm going to guess that you're playing Revving Wings.
You got it.
What do you think?
I'm really enjoying it, actually. Like, I expected kind of, as any kind of Final Fantasy spin-off, I kind of expect pretty low things these days.
They haven't really given us reason to expect the best.
Right, exactly. But I'm like really impressed. Like, it's cool. It takes like a lot of the like Final Fantasy 12 elements and makes it into this little RTS for the DS that really uses the DS. Like the DS is built for RTS.
Well, I mean, it runs entirely on the touchscreen. It's
Right.
basically the only interface. I mean, you can use the buttons a little bit and use the D-pad to move the map around, but yeah, it's just like tap and everything happens that way.
Yeah, I love how it takes those elements, like all the different ways that you can use the DS to control your units. You can make a little box around them and just move them that way. You can use the buttons limitedly to either cycle through your leader. You have like anywhere from like 2 to 4 different leaders in any combat, and you can move them and just their units, or you can choose them from the top of the board, pull down.
Right,
you can
it's
do a lot.
It's absolutely exactly like Heroes of Mana, which is also by Square Enix, also coming for DS a little before. But Heroes of Mana actually lets you draw like circles and odd shapes so that you can pull, kind of groups that aren't together into a single area.
I did have a similar problem. Like you can, summon your units from these different like little generators that you take over, but I had to group my units with a leader so that I could move them efficiently. Like I had the heal unit, and instead of being able to mix, healers with combat, I had to just make, okay, this person, all of their units are heal, because it's not easy just to choose a bunch of units. Like
Right.
you group people in on accident. It's also hard to separate just the units from the
It
leader.
really is. That's a real complaint I have, is that when I'm sending out a melee group and then there's a healer caught in the middle of it, and you can't get the healer out, the healer's going to get totally creamed as soon as it goes into combat.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit frustrating. I guess part of me really wanted this to be more like Final Fantasy 12, where it would be a smaller group with more complicated gambits. But in this, gambits are basically like a powerful attack that you can use once your meter fills out.
Yeah.
And your character will keep using it over and over, but in between casting or using their gambit action, their one gambit action, they'll just keep spamming weak attacks.
Right. I do like before combat, and this is another great thing of the dual screens. I mean, the dual screen is usually a map, which is also useful because you see where the resources you can mine are and treasures.
People make fun of DS games that have a map on the second
Right.
screen, but no, it's so good here because every little detail is on there. Like if you have a fallen party member, you see them as a little star because they've got stars over their head as they fainted. You can see every enemy, you can see every main character, or like every player character. You can see where treasures are. You
Yeah.
can see where mineable resources are. It's really, really detailed.
And those are cool too, like the mineable resources, because you make your own items and you can even like name them and stuff like that. And those are really like the powerful items. But yeah, the map is useful, and then also like the graphics, like for a DS game, the 3D backgrounds look really good, and all the characters look good, and
I
they
feel like
emote.
They kind of cheated a little bit because they don't let you rotate the battlefields at all, and I think that's a big flaw.
There have been a couple times actually where something was right in the way.
There's like in one of the battles that I was just talking about, there's an archway, and
Yeah.
it's really huge. And
I know the exact one you're talking about.
my characters got into the thick of things with enemies while they were all obscured behind the arch. I was like, all right, I guess I'll just see who wins, and whoever lives at the end of it, I guess that's the victor.
4 people came in with the archway and 3 people came out the other
so
side.
they give you this fixed camera angle so things can look really good, but I feel like that kind of is a detrimental element to the gameplay.
Yeah, and that's
But
the one
sprites look
time.
really good too.
Yeah.
The sprites are like, they're tiny, but they're detailed, and you can tell at a glance who everyone is.
Even in the cutscenes, they're like emoting with these tiny
yeah.
little like 2 pixels.
It reminds me of like Final Fantasy Tactics, where they were very expressive even though they were tiny and kind of super cute.
Yeah, I'm definitely into it, but I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be a while before we get it here, right?
It's not coming this year, which, I mean, Final Fantasy 12 took about 6 months to make it here, and this game does not have anywhere near the depth and story and text as Final Fantasy 12. Like, that game was just full of text that they had to translate.
Yeah.
This, not so much. I mean, there's story to it. There's, some stuff to deal with in the between battle scenes, but
Right, yeah, it doesn't seem
But
like...
it seems like, this would be a surefire winner this Christmas
Yeah.
if they released it this fall, but maybe not.
Tell me again why you didn't come with us.
I was ill like a science lesson. I wanted to rock that show, but I was at home with a sinus infection.
Aw.
No, I don't even remember, man. The thing is, I needed to be there. Now I need to pick your brain, see what I missed out on.
It's different.
No grenades. Yeah. I don't know, man. That's like telling like a Forza fan they're like no wheels or something.
The grenades are often so effective that they were one of the ways that people were winning games. We want much more sharp lines between classes. We want those experiences between classes to be much more divergent. One of the secondary reasons were they were the largest source of spam in the game. We don't like spam for a variety of reasons. We don't think it's not terribly skill-based, and it's also very confusing to new players usually in that they die and they're not really sure exactly what killed them. So that's why we removed it. And of course, one of the things we have to do as designers is to make sure that we haven't hurt our game.
Grenades are huge. I mean, they were like the scourge of the game. They were its Achilles heel, but they were also one of the things that differentiated gameplay in that more than anything. And it was all about the secondary grenades. You know, the classic you've heard me ramble about all the time. Can I do concussion jumps? Can I conk jump?
I think there was always a fear that it was going to end up being kind of like the same game as TFC, but
Right.
with new graphics.
Yeah, so I guess I would have been expecting like maybe like new, rebalanced, and like even crazier secondaries.
And one of the main things we felt that removing grenades did was remove some decisions from the players. And so we wanted to give you equivalently interesting ones in Team Fortress 2. One of the main ways we did that was to take hold of the secondary weapons that every class has that in TFC were kind of afterthoughts and solve some specific problem that the primary weapon doesn't solve. So for example, whether you're a soldier who's dealing with someone at distance dodging a rockets really easily, or a pirate who's such an incredibly short-range class with a flamethrower and can't hit anyone at some distance, switching to his shotgun because he needs to use that. So we've tried to really make those more interesting decisions to make up for that loss of grenades.
The secondary weapons in this game, not only just like shotguns and that sort of thing, but also the melee weapons, you can actually like do damage with them. So even as a class like a medic, where you are definitely playing like a support role, if you get in a close quarters combat with someone else, you usually can take them down. The things you are given from the get-go, no matter what class you're playing, are just more useful. And before I was wondering how it was going to feel on consoles, whether or not you'd even be able to play a game like Team Fortress.
Do they take those out for the console? If you're playing competitively as a soldier, you might come in, you have a grenade charged, you do a rocket jump that does splash damage against an opponent, you might confuse him. While you're in the air, you drop your grenade, which is then primed, it explodes on his head, and then you fire a second rocket on his head. That sort of maneuver seemed like really unlikely, on this. So I just was wondering, because that's the last thing I want to hear is that they made these changes on the PC version because they're making one game for all three platforms.
After playing Team Fortress 2, I could definitely see playing that on a 360 controller and having no problem with it. So
We think of roles first and experiences first, and we get to sort of class embodiments of that later. For example, the scout who used to have a role of being the sort of guy who ran away from combat a lot and sort of avoided combat. We didn't feel that was terribly successful, and we were toying with this idea of someone whose combat experience was all about movement as opposed to sort of aim. So it's not so much about how well you aim, it's about how well you anticipate other people's aim and avoid it. Multiplayer is a constant battle of balancing, especially when you have 9 different classes and they all have different capabilities.
and they're very analog. How much should you reward a sentry gun, a great sentry gun placement on the engineer's part versus really good aim on the soldier's part? I think one of the biggest problems is always trying to make sure classes are really distinct, which is something we I think we're a lot happier with in Team Fortress 2 than we were in, say, older versions of Team Fortress, where there were sort of classes which blurred over each other a little too much, and so a really skilled player playing this class was better than a beginner guy at this class, or even an average guy at this class, even though this class is supposed to be the guy that's good at that thing or something. And so trying to solve those kinds of problems were the really tricky ones, I think.
This is a game I played in a clan, extensively, know it so well. I mean, clearly, your guys' perspective is just as valuable as mine, if not more, to a large segment of our audience. I mean, just what's your general impression?
I play first-person shooters all the time, but only single player.
Yeah.
It's because I feel like I'm just whenever I go into a multiplayer situation, I'm just totally floored. Right. So I was picking up the support role right from the beginning, the medic, and it's probably analogous to the same reason I play a priest in World of Warcraft, because I kind of like being the sideline guy who's helping everyone else, at least while I kind of figure out what's going on.
We've always been unhappy with medics in our FPSs in the past. Building a good support class that people want to play is a real challenge, where you can feel valuable, but at the same time, you shouldn't have to give up some part of your fun because you know that it will be valuable for the team. You should play a medic because it's more fun to play a medic than some other class.
It sounds like this is the biggest class change out of all of them.
No ability to infect,
Can't infect the other
and no
players.
concussion jumping. Medic was easily one of the best offensive classes for that mobility. So the speed with which he could get in and out of the opponent's base. But so now he's largely a support role in the way that it would make sense for a medic to be.
We were expecting and deliberately designed, a set of skills into the medics so that there would be good and bad medics, because you need part of playing a class is realizing that there's a skill curve and that it gets deeper the more you play. You recognize more things you can do that are of use. But something we weren't expecting was that there was such a significant skill to being a good medic target. And so within the company, with over all the sort of months of playtesting we've done, there's been these certain people who have shown up that all the medics really like them because they really know how to work well with a medic. They know how to sort of keep one eye on their medic and keep him alive. When they're going around corners, they try and keep a wide berth so the medic can keep their beam on them the whole way, and all these kinds of little subtle movement things about keeping your medic alive.
I spent most of my time crouched behind a rock where there's a heavy, tearing shit up over there, and just with my linked heal gun healing him. And then eventually, as you heal, this bar fills up, and then you're both invincible, so you can start making a push across the field.
How do you get 10 guys to act like a team? And they've never met each other. Some subset of them have voice communication, maybe even none of them, and they're expected to somehow work together in a great coordinated thing. And of course, as we find through years of experience on DoD and TFC, is that, hey, this is really freaking hard. We said, all right, well, can we deliver a really, really good experience between two guys? Can we make two people feel like they're incredibly connected? That if they could talk to just each other and they were all working together, or the pair of them were just working together, could we deliver on a really good experience there, as opposed to delivering an okay team experience to everyone? And so that's sort of what started the medic sort of mechanic. If you play a game of Counter-Strike, there's these euphoric moments where you happen to kill 3 or 4 guys in a row and you're on top of the world, and then there's these times when the enemy killed 3 or 4 of you in a row, and so on. And one of the things we were unhappy about with Team Fortress Classic was it tended to be a very steady experience. The medic's invulnerability is one of those solutions that came out of that kind of thinking.
In our single player games, we found that pacing is really important, giving people moments of rest and building up to crescendo and having these really, really tense moments that you overcome, and you have this great feeling of satisfaction. And it's basically the multiplayer kind of way of handling that kind of same scenario as far as building some pacing into the game.
The control point system sort of sets up what's the basic sort of goals for each team, which is someone's attacking and someone's defending. So it sets up that offense and defense thing. The other thing it does is it allows us to sort of use the entire area of a map. And so one of the problems we had with Capture the Flag, for example, is where if you've got this big map and you've got a flag at each end, then the really important parts of the map are the endpoints. And capture points let us distribute sort of points of interest in multiple areas. At any point you can look down at your HUD and you get a pretty good sense of where the two teams are at.
I have an open mind. I'm willing to just be knocked, bowled over by it. And I'm just kind of saying that as, like I said, the guy that's used to certain things, but I want something different too. Say the next iteration of Street Fighter comes out, or Soul Calibur or something, and you find out that they've taken your character and they've changed not only the inputs for some moves, but they've removed some of the moves, but they've added new ones, and it's just at first, it's just you're really resisting. I want to see Valve succeed and show console gamers why they're so cool on PC, but I don't want to see them turn their back on us.
I think the fear was that the game was going to be the same game, and what we've come to learn is that it's not. It's highly different than it was before, and so even players who played a ton back in the day are gonna have to relearn how to play. The value pack is definitely worth the money. So hopefully console gamers will finally get a real taste of the true Valve experience.